I'll often be asked, "Are you religious?" And I have to say, "No, I'm not religious, but I am a Christian." And there's a significant difference. To illustrate, I grew up in what I would say religion. Went to church, read my Bible, prayed every day. But it was this literal fear of God, that if you weren't perfect, God was going to smite you off the face of the earth. And when you're running around trying to be perfect like that, you never feel good enough. You never feel like you're being accepted. And so, what I would see people in the church doing is anytime they saw somebody else committing a sin, they're like, "Oh, look, but I'm not as bad as that guy," and trying to use that as justification or some way of it's like dominance theory, right? Like trying to make yourself feel better by making others seem less important. That is not the model that Christ set for the church. And recently I was made aware of a pastor by the name of Dietrich Bonhoeffer. He was a pastor in Germany during World War II, and at a time when the government was taking control of the churches and not allowing the churches to say anything against the government, he stood firm. He would not change the gospel of Christ. He has two quotes that I want to read real quick. The first one says, "If my sinfulness appears to me to be in any way smaller or less detestable in comparison with the sins of others, I am still not recognizing my sinfulness at all. How can I possibly serve another person in unfeigned humility if I seriously regard his sinfulness as worse than my own?" That's one of them that also plays into this one, talking about the issue of the church that I was just referencing. "The pious fellowship permits no one to be a sinner, so everybody must conceal his sin from himself and from the fellowship. We dare not be sinners. Many Christians are unthinkably horrified when a real sinner is suddenly discovered among the righteous. So we remain alone with our sin, living in lies and hypocrisy. The fact is that we are sinners." And that's true. And that's if we could just acknowledge that what Christ says, right? And that's what church is supposed to be. Christ has set the example that, look, you can't be good enough to be in the kingdom with me. But that's why I came, to reconcile your relationship with God and to give you grace where you get to start over every single day without carrying that baggage and that burden of trying to be perfect, because nobody can do it. Nobody can get there. So he, and that's the reason Christ came, right? Was to free us from that law type religion. Religion is more an act of the mind. It's this like checklist of all these things that you shouldn't do. Whereas Christianity, Christ came to free us from that. And he came to give us life in the fullest. Some great examples of where Christ has gone and tried to call us out in our desire to make these rules to become more perfect. The perfect example, I was growing up on a couple 1,000-acre crop farm. And so this one really stuck out to me. There were 613 laws, Jewish laws. And one of them was you could not slide your chair away from the table on the Sabbath, because since the floors and all the homes were dirt, if one of the legs of the chair were to have dug into the dirt, well, that's like tilling the soil, and tilling the soil is farming, and farming is work. So you couldn't slide your chair. And again, that's why Christ came, was to say, look, guys, you've got this wrong. I know you want a relationship with me, but you're focusing on the rules, not the relationship. And that's where it matters, is our relationship with Christ and our relationship with each other. Because if we're truly Christians, we are seeking to understand who Christ is, the perfect example he has set, and we're to emulate that to those around us. I'll be doing another video on the person of Christ, but one book that has really brought clarity on this subject to me that is still one of my favorites, and I know the name is a bit cheesy, but hear me out. The book is called How to Be Like Jesus by Pat Williams. And that describes the person of Christ, not this false image that both the church and society in general have propagated. So Christ desires that we all live our life like He would have, not in this state of religion where we get in our own way of our relationship with each other and our relationship with Him.